Hey guys, I'm Grant MacDonald, and today I'm going to be talking about the subject of Native American code talkers. So many of you have probably heard of Native American code talkers, but you may not realize just how important they were. In fact, it was said that without Native American code talkers, that we may have never won World War II. And so you may have heard of the Navajo. They were the most popular of the code talkers, but there was also the Apache, among other tribes, and they did not just fight in World War II. You probably have heard of code talkers in World War II, but they also fought in other wars, such as World War I, and there were other tribes used as well, such as the Cherokee mainly, and among other groups. And many of them have lived on to tell their stories, and there are certain prominent figures that I will be discussing later on in this video. So stay tuned and I will discuss. So among the most common code talkers in World War II, if not the most common, were the Navajo. And so the Navajo Nation is the largest Native American community in the United States, at least in the contiguous United States in terms of population. So this makes sense. And the Navajo language is the most spoken Native American language in the contiguous United States. And it is chosen for its uniqueness, and it is a grammatically complex language, even though this doesn't really matter, which I will get to later. And the enemy was likely unable to translate it. So here we have some Navajo words. We have hello, which is pronounced yaate. We have thank you, which is ajeje. And Navajo language is dine bisab. And tank is chidinana e be el do so beka da nazneligi, which translates to you can read that for yourself. And here we have some Navajo code. So the way Navajo code works is each letter has an English word with that letter translated into Navajo. I know that sounds kind of complicated, but you can see here, like for A, it's ant. Ant is the English word that begins with the letter A. And then that is translated into Navajo. And that's how the Navajo code works. And for each letter, there are 3 words that you can use interchangeably to make it even more complex so that the enemy could not interpret it. And so, for example, A, you have ant, apple, and axe. And those 3 words are all translated into Navajo. And then they also have some special words just to make things easier, because obviously it would take a while to have to spell out everything, which it did. But for certain common terms or the names of ships, they just had names for them. They didn't have to spell it out, which made it easier. And in the next section, I will be discussing Peter MacDonald, who was a famous Navajo code talker, among other famous Navajo code talkers, and their significance in the war. Again, as I mentioned earlier, it was said that without the Navajos, we may have never even won World War II. So perhaps one of the most well-known code talkers during World War II was Peter MacDonald. Peter MacDonald was a Navajo. He was born in Arizona, and he went to boarding school in Shiprock, New Mexico. And he wanted to enlist in the military at the age of 15, which is too young, but he said he was 17. And when they asked for his birth certificate, he said he didn't have one. He was rejected, but later he eventually did get into the military. And he discussed that he at first didn't like it because he was in his truck and it made him uncomfortable. But when he got there, he immediately changed his mind, and he said that memorization was one of the hardest things because there are multiple words for the same letter, such as in Guadalcanal. There are 4 A's, and so you have to use 3 different words to represent A, which can be a challenge. And the interesting thing is that when he got back from the war, he was told he could only say he was a radio man, so he wasn't even allowed to say he was a code talker. So whenever anyone asked what he did, he just said a radio man. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is the Choctaw code talkers during World War I. Now, during World War I, the Germans were effectively able to basically listen in to the American Army's phone lines and find out the location of certain supplies and other, like the Allied forces. But the thing is that the Choctaws, of course, spoke a Native American language, and here you can see a map of where they are located. They're now located in Oklahoma, though they have been relocated like many Native American tribes. And so the Germans were unable to translate their Native American language. And of course, like the Navajo, they didn't have direct translations, but it was a bit more simple. Like, it wasn't like spelling things out. They would have like words they would use, like, for example, scalps were casualties. Fast shooting gun meant machine gun. Big gun was artillery. Twice big group was used for a battalion. Relay team for messages. And you'll see that on a slide coming up in a little bit. So a notable member is James Edwards. James Edwards was one of the Choctaw, and he was on a relay team and also helped work out code words. So anyways, here you can see the code, and thanks to their efforts, the Americans were able to effectively conceal their artillery. So now let's bring it back to the book that I read in class, Call Me Indian by Fred Sasakamoose, as there are several similarities here. So first of all, Fred is awarded for his talent by being called chief, which is the highest rank in many Native American tribes. And this is similar to Peter MacDonald, who was the chairman of the Navajo Nation, which is the highest rank in modern times in the Navajo Nation. Because, well, Fred was just good at hockey, and Peter MacDonald was skilled at his service in World War II, as well as being a medicine man. And also, Fred is enlisted to a foreign country. Well, not really enlisted in a military sense, but he goes to a foreign country to play hockey. He's from Canada, and he goes to the United States. And this is kind of similar. I mean, obviously, Canada and the United States are really close, but it's kind of similar in a way to Peter MacDonald, or any code talker for that matter, going to a foreign country to use their code. And next, Fred has a natural talent for what he does. He's just naturally very good at hockey, and other people recognize that, and his coach calls him chief. This is similar to Peter MacDonald and many other code talkers in both world wars. that, I mean, obviously a lot of them speak their language natively, or if not natively, then they at least know it pretty well because they were taught it maybe as a child. And this leads us to Fred also speaks a Native American language in Call Me Indian. He speaks Plains Cree, but you could argue that sometimes when he's having conversation with his mom or anyone else in Plains Cree, perhaps it is because he doesn't want anyone else knowing what he's saying. I know that's the reason why a lot of people speak in their native language if it is not English in English-speaking countries, is so that they can get away with a new degree of privacy that native English speakers are simply not capable of.